Elegy written in a country churchyard is one of the famous poems written by Thomas Gray. It was published in 1751. It is an elegy. Elegy means a speaker mourns someone's death. Here in this poem, the speaker does not mourn a particular person's death. The poet here presents general nature of death. Death is unavoidable. No one can accept death. The poet Thomas Gray started to write this poem in 1742 after death of his close friend Richard West. When his aunt died and when his friend William Faulkner was killed by highwaymen, the poet seriously contemplated his mortality. He completed this poem in 1750 and it was published in 1751. Let us try to understand the poem very briefly. In the beginning of the poem, the poet tells us that there is a speaker in a graveyard. It is the time of evening, the church bell tolls. There are a herd of cows and a plowman. The sun is about to set, so a herd of cows and the plowman return to home, but the poet stays there. Now it is totally darkness there. The beetle flies about and the owls hoot there. Now the poet thinks about the buried people in the graveyard. The poet mainly talks about common people, ordinary people. They are not famous, but they are very hardworking and honest. The poet argues that we should not make fun of these common people as their graves are not elaborate. No ambition, no power, no position, no wealth can accept anybody from death. So, the dead people who are buried here in the graveyard, they are not going to return their home. They are not greeted by their wives and children. So, death is a part of life. At the end of the poet himself imagines his own death. He tells us that a grey-haired shepherd meets a visitor in the same graveyard. The visitor asks the shepherd about the poet and his death, but the shepherd replies that he knows very little of the poet and his death. He only knows that the poet generally visits the same place and he is a lover of nature. But after some time, the shepherd stops seeing the poet. One day, he observes the poet's funeral and now the poet is buried in the graveyard. At the end of the poem, the shepherd tells the visitor to read inscription written on the gravestone of the poet in the graveyard. The poem ends with epitaph.